to rule ourselves. He said, but if we allow the foreign Muslims to come into the temple who already know about Islam, they will establish themselves as being more knowledgeable than you and I, and thus they will set themselves up as a leader of our community. He said he didn't want that. He wanted us to be the leader of our own community. In 1977, when Imam Muhammad first led the delegation to the Hajj, he was assisted by Ramadan Islamiyah, an Islamic organization out of Saudi Arabia, who provided some finances and also land accommodations for Imam Muhammad's community. They wanted Imam Muhammad to accept to come to Hajj in 76. And he said no. We were not ready in 1976. He had just become the leader in 1975. He needed more time to work. So he would accept coming in 1976, but he said in 1977, that would be the time. That would be the time when he would have enough done with this community that we would qualify ourselves to be able to go on Hajj and not act like we were tourists or spectators. We left Chicago. We landed in Amsterdam and Holland. Actually, there were two planes. The total number of Muslims that left America was 300. There were two planes, one leaving New York and one leaving Chicago. We from the West Coast happened to be on the one that was leaving from Chicago, which was the same plane that Imam Muhammad, his brother Jabir, and other Muslims from Chicago was on, and we all boarded the plane and converged in Amsterdam, Holland, before we took off from there to Jeddah, where we would be processed and begin our trip for Hajj. But on the plane to Amsterdam, on our way to Hajj, there were some very popular imams and sheikhs that were part of our delegation. Many of them you know. Sheikh Muhammad Siddiqui, Dr. Muhammad Siddiqui was one. Dr. Ahmed Saka was another. Sheikh Muhammad Noor was another. A representative of Ramadan al-Islamiyah. He was also there on the plane, as well as one of the African sheikhs that was a gift to the Imam to use as he saw fit in America to help with Islamic studies. His name was Rafai. Sheikh Rafai was stationed in New York. On the plane to Amsterdam, Sheikh Rafai went to the Imam and asked the Imam, could he talk to the believers about what to do once they reach the point where we should begin to change our clothes and get ready for Umrah. So the Imam told Sheikh Rafai, say, you go and find Abdul Karim Hasan, Imam Abdul Karim Hasan from Los Angeles. Bring him here. Sheikh Rafai came and got me and brought me to the Imam. The Imam said to Sheikh Rafai, he said, you tell Imam Abdul Karim Hasan what you want to say to the believers, to the Hajjis, and he will tell them. Thus, he was establishing circumstances and let him tell the people what you think the people should know. So he came and got me and told me what he wanted to say. I went over with the Imam. The Imam said, okay. I got on the speakerphone on the plane, and I spoke to all of the Hajjis on the plane. And those of you who were there in 1977 should remember that and bear witness to what I was saying. Yeah. When we landed in Amsterdam, Holland, the Imam told me, he says, you have to be responsible for all of the Hajjis, because I don't know if I will be able to stay for the whole trip. So I'll have to leave somebody in charge. So you're going to have to be responsible for them. So what I did, and those of you who were there, remember this well. We had 300 people. We split the 300 people up into groups of 10. We appointed an imam for each group. And each imam was responsible for those 10 people. They must make sure that they were cared for, that they had enough, that they didn't get lost in the crowds of Hajj, that they would get the right food, that they would find the right place for their bedding, that they would be able to go to these sacred precincts without any problems at all, and that they would be ultimately responsible for their welfare. Each of these imams had to report to another group of imams, which were 3, who would take into consideration what they had done and how they had followed those instructions, how the believers were faring during this particular Hajj, because it was a new experience, it's a different experience, and it was an experience that for the first time we had to undergo. But the hardship was not something that was so difficult, because we had undergone worse hardship than that in our sojourn in America. But when we set up this group and set up the groupings in particular order, we were able to board the plane in order, and we were able to get seated in order, and each imam had to make sure that all of the people under his responsibility were there, well, and accounted for. Now, Imam Muhammad left on an earlier plane to Mecca. Our plane, we had to wait for another plane to come in. Imam Muhammad had to leave early. He and Jafar and about 10 members of the group had to leave earlier because there was not enough room on the plane that was going to Jeddah right away. So they took Imam Muhammad and that group and they went on ahead, because in Jeddah there was a delegation of reception waiting for the Muslims there. So Imam Muhammad and his party went to Jeddah, went to the delegation, and we didn't see them anymore until we were bed down in houses in one of the universities there in Jeddah to stay until we left Jeddah and go on to Mecca, where we began our Umrah. We left Jeddah on buses. The buses took us there.